Alafin laments release of arrested Fulani kidnappers by police. The Alafin of Oyo, Oba Lamidi Adeyemi, has lamented the way the police treat some cases involving some suspected criminals who are Fulani. The monarch said some Fulani persons who were arrested for kidnapping and handed over to the police were released in controversial circumstances. Alafin said this in Oyo on Monday when the Oluwo of Iwo, Oba Abdulrahid Akambi, visited him in his palace. Oba Adeyemi said, Nigeria is under a weak system. The system is no more working. Nigeria's system of government is failing, most especially on security. Security should not be under an exclusive legislative list. And in his words, he says, I have attended several fora where security issues were discussed and challenged our state governors. Security-wise, they are toothless. If the Inspector General of Police orders for the release of a suspect, no state governor can reverse such order. Why? Okay, now, you see the things in the Constitution. These things are the things that do not make sense. But because it's in the Constitution, they change the Constitution. They make the Constitution according to what they want. The people don't even they don't even know what they want to talk about. So he continues and he says, we have put machinery in place and arrested many kidnappers who are Fulanis. We handed them to the police, but many of them were later released. This calls for sober reflection. The Oluwo had earlier tasked the Alafin to do everything to bring Yoruba Obas under one umbrella. He also challenged those seeking for Yoruba self-determination to recall the federal legislators in their zone, saying doing so would convince the people that they needed a new nation of their own. Okay? He said Nigerians, irrespective of ethnicity, would later appreciate it better if the country remained one. He said Nigeria was created by the sacrifices of our forefathers. Now, we're colonized and we're named Nigeria by the British. Yeah. They committed their lives to nurture the baby from infancy to this time. Without their consent, they were actually exploited for cheap labor for the expansion and for the development of other countries. Well, the colonizers, basically the British. It says the baby has matured with an ailing soul. We all acknowledge there's a problem, but must we throw away the child with the bath water? The child I brought to you is an emergency case. The child is in the intensive care unit. I implore you to take the lead, treat the child and ensure his timely recuperation. You are an encyclopedia of Yoruba traditional rulers. The failure and disunity among Yoruba monarchs are disturbing. It has given some Yoruba sons and daughters the opportunity to abuse their monarchs on social media. Well, the fact is the world is changing. The world is progressive. Again, if there isn't a general consensus and a conventional thing that we hold our Obas to this standard. Again, the fact is it's deteriorated because the common value system has deteriorated. Why? Because as a whole country, despite our ethnicities, there is some sort of compromise on watering down where we come from. Even though you might not admit it, it is there because we're trying to adapt to live with one another. For the fact that our official language is English, that just says it all. Unarguably, the state of the nation is fragile and very delicate. The fact is because we've waited too long. We need to understand, was Nigeria meant to be a nation? It wasn't. Nigeria was a deal, was a contract, was a plan that was for the cashing out, for the profit of other stakeholders but Nigerians. So how do we know what the basis of us getting independence as a nation was? Because personally for me, I find it very, very suspicious how 6 years after we got independence, 7 years, all of a sudden there's the Biafran War. So it needs to tell you that if there was an agreement that we were going to be a nation and we're going to live as a nation, that's fine. But then why would all of a sudden a party just decide that we want to have our own? So again, we need to understand the basis on which we got independence from the terms of the British side and also the terms that was agreed to by our side, the Nigerians, the Igbos, Yorubas and Hausas. That was it. And the condition was technically Britain would have indirect rule over Nigeria through the Fulani's Hausas. That's the history. But then there's obviously more to it. That's just a very, very simple version. So it's like, again, this analogy of the country being a baby, the country was never even meant to be. Well, it is now, but then again, we as inhabitants of the country, we as citizens, we can decide the kind of country that we want. Unfortunately, we just all have very, weak our ideas are very, very divided, and so it's like we're not forging forward. It says, dividing Nigeria at this critical time is a loss to the Yoruba land. We can't go back to start afresh after years of sacrifices. Years of sacrifices that have been unfruitful. What are you talking about? These years have been unfruitful. Nothing good has come out of it. So why are you holding on to something that is obviously not working out? Because again, for Nigeria to work, you have to be under the assumption that every Nigerian, every single one, is willing to put their differences aside, stop being selfish, and actually work through these problems. But no. Because we are not, the fact is, we are not at our fullest expressions as Nigerians in terms of, for each tribe, for each ethnicity, we are not at our fullest expressions. We're not. We all have to adapt to living to each other. It is not necessarily a bad thing, but if it is not what you genuinely want to do, it will get to a point where you cannot pretend no more, and all you have is resentment for the other people you're living with. That is what is happening now. But then again, there are some core issues that, that are in our mentalities, and if we were to separate, it would basically be Nigeria part 1, part 2, part 3. So again, we need to think about what we really, really want and how if we can survive. And I think one mistake everyone is making in this is that we all have the assumption that only Nigeria and Nigerians are the stakeholders. I'm going to repeat that. We all have the assumption that Nigerians are the only stakeholders. That's it. It's as simple as that. The same contract, the same treaty that was signed for us to get independence, we have to go back and look at what was the basis. Because you cannot tell me that it was just for self-determination, human rights, all that. Come on now. It's not a fairy tale here. So again, it says instead, we should concentrate such energy on ensuring Yoruba produce the next president that understands and address our weaknesses. Exactly the problem. Not that Yoruba president is bad, but what if other tribes do not want a Yoruba president? Because again, because at the end of the day, you'd obviously want to represent your people, put your best foot forward for your people. And of course, if your alliance is to Yoruba people alone, because that's what you understand, that's absolutely fine. But you are not in a country that has only Yoruba people, and we are not even well integrated. We are not well integrated enough for there to be, fine, we have identity in terms of our ethnicities, but then we come together to make Nigeria our sole identity, which is a mixing pot of our different ethnicities. If we have that mentality, it's fine, but it's definitely not like that because we are very, very divided. And it's fine if you're going to go into, and it's fine if you have the mentality that, as a Yoruba president, I'm going into the office to look at my Yoruba people only. It's fine, but it's fine as a mentality because you're Yoruba and your alliance and allegiance is to Yoruba people. But the fact is, Yorubas are not the only people in the country. And I think that's just the only thing. Put what you think about this in the comment section below, and do not forget to like and subscribe.